My name's Ashley Wright. I am coming to share my story with you today. I am a person with lived experience. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I've been in recovery since May 1st of 2019 from substances. I've also found that mental health has been on the upswing since then also. I have a history of hospitalizations and things like that, so I've been hospital free for that period of time also. I want to share in my story today what I've kind of titled it as Purpose and Pain. I found that's been so true to me. There's been a lot of painful things in my life and just kind of things happening, playing out the hard way. So, but it's incited a lot of purpose in me. I feel my higher power has implanted desires and passions into my heart that are tied to what I've been through that allow me to do what I do today. I'll give a little bit of a backstory on how I came to this point. So, for mental health challenges for me, that began, I think, in early childhood. I had a predisposition to mental illness in my family. Major depression was big in my family. Both my sisters have been diagnosed. I think my dad struggled with many mental health challenges. It also played out in my mom's side of the family. We've got schizophrenia on that side, so I think I had a predisposition biologically to come to have some issues. Early childhood was really rough. I experienced loss early on. My mother passed away when I was 5 years old. She was kind of my protector. My dad struggled with alcoholism, and as I mentioned, I think undiagnosed mental health issues. So it was tough in my upbringing. I did have kind of a saving grace in my upbringing. My grandfather was a pastor of a church. So I'm proud to say my first love in life was God, and it's been a big part of my story. But I struggled a lot with knowing why having such a strong relationship with a higher power and things like that, things with my father would allow to be happen, and kind of have this blaming sort of thing with God also. And then in that loss, really just kind of turned my back on it, got very angry, kind of just postured myself against that because I was very upset. So I went through the loss there, was living with my dad. He eventually passed away too when I was 13. He got very sick with lung cancer, and I watched him gradually get more and more sick and eventually pass away. I found in my upbringing with my dad, he didn't teach me much about being a parent, being a positive parent, teaching healthy things. I just kind of like swore off everything he did do and decided that that was exactly what I didn't want to be as a parent, and I didn't want to do drugs or drink alcohol or be abusive, things like that. But I did come to find when my dad did pass away, that's when it began the early dependence on alcohol. I had my first drink at 13 when he passed away, and there was something in that that felt like a warmth and a comfort inside of me when I drank. It felt like there was just something about it. I knew it could be something I could rely on that would take those feelings away. Like when my dad passed, I just had sort of a huge breakdown where I had the realization I was orphaned. I didn't have parents. I felt all alone in the world, and it was basically like me in survival mode. I had been in survival mode my whole life, but this was the point that I felt completely alone. It was me against the world. All I could do was just take care of myself and not get close to anybody. Loss was so hard. Loved my mom so dearly and still do. Wish she was here to walk life with me. But in losing that, it really made me shut down a lot internally. I would stuff feelings a lot during abusive times with my dad. So these feelings, it was just stuffing. Therapy was never a thing. I think it should have been introduced very early, especially when my mom passed. But up until that point, no intervention, not really any support. There were older ladies that would bring me to church, but my dad was very against God and a very angry person. So not much support there at all. And then no intervention for any emotional problems I would have, just how you would need and grief to process. None of that really happened for me. So I found an alcohol that really numbed those feelings that I was just carrying around. When they would come to surface, I would stuff, and then that just suppressed it for me. After my parents died, I was moved to Minnesota with family. I lived there for a short time. I experienced some sexual abuse in the family. Mental health really started to bubble to the surface. I began self-harming. I was drinking to suppress more feelings. There were all these new feelings with this happening to me. Self-harm, I began cutting and burning myself. I found that external pain helped release the internal pain or give a relief to that in a kind of way. So, and then my behaviors were kind of identified with my aunt and the family. So I was brought in to have my first case manager. They brought me to mental health, like psychiatrists, therapists. I was diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder and major depressive disorder and put on some medications. Eventually, the whole situation would kind of come to a head and the family would dissolve. The abuse would come out, and I was sent to the system at 16, foster care, where I would remain until 18. This was actually the first time that counseling was introduced to me. I was in a therapeutic foster care, and so I would go to counseling. It was very hard for me to say things out loud, so I found that writing was an expression for me. I would write down throughout the week how it all went, how I felt, things like that, and just hand it to the therapist to read. So that was helpful for me for that period of time. I did have struggles. I was really confined because part of the dissolving of the family unit that I came from was running away with older men and things like that. So it was a really strict household. When I turned 18, I kind of was off to the races. My mental health support was cut off because I was let go of the program. Kind of just set off into the world at 18 with no real family. I had two half sisters here in Minnesota, but they enabled me to drink. So I found a relationship right away. Ended up pregnant with my first son at 18, right out of high school, which kind of squashed my plans that I had to go to university and go after a degree at that time. But love that little boy so much. He was my world. I did still struggle in adulthood. I found more freedom to dip into alcoholism, partying in my early years, things like that. I would get into drug abuse, toxic relationships. Nearly every relationship I had in my adult life was turned abusive. I would get turned on to stronger and stronger drugs in those relationships. I'd have severe mental health issues that would decline over the years as I would see as I got more and more into drinking, more and more into dependence, more and more intensive drug use, stronger drugs, moving into marijuana, to cocaine, to methamphetamine, and struggled with that. I returned back to self-harm during that time, back to cutting and dealing with my feelings that way. Eventually, I would be incarcerated. I did some jail time for some behaviors that happened as a result of my alcoholism, being under the influence. I lost my kids multiple times to the foster care and family. Just was really lost during that period of time. That was the majority of the time from my 20s, early 20s to late 20s, was just this loss and all this kind of toxicity, substance use, poor mental health, things like that. When I lost my kids in my late 20s and then ended up with criminal charges as a result of that, everything just kind of fell apart. During this time, with the children being taken away, supports were actually increased in my life. My mental health was acknowledged. There was a case manager that took over my case and worked with me. There was a CPS worker also that was worked on reunification with me and the kids, me getting better. I worked with Rise Incorporated on housing and employment. I had a lot of supports coming in. I was still pretty lost, so it was hard to navigate, but they were there for me. I can remember the CPS worker really went above and beyond in meeting me where I was at. I did well at following the case plans and making the visits, and I really did want my kids back. I was just couldn't find what was going to keep me well at that point. But I walked through that, and they helped me so much. The case manager saw I was in a particularly abusive situation and helped me in rehoming, rehousing, moved me into a safe space, my own apartment, where I worked on getting clean and had a good stretch of time where I'd gotten off meth and quit using and things like that. Still had those professional supports, but something was lacking in the social network kind of thing. I wasn't familiar with recovery, meetings, people, stuff like that. So it was really just me cold turkey, white knuckling it. It was very difficult to go day by day without using, having nobody to really talk to. I couldn't tell the workers so much, that I had been using so intensely throughout the time. But just kind of wanted it so badly that I kept pushing forward, keep staying sober. I eventually did get reunited with my kids after about 9 months of continued not wellness, but abstinence, I'd say, period of abstinence. So there was reunification there, trial home visits, things like that. I did struggle again with mental health. Ended up going into the hospital after having my son a few months and my daughter was going to come back. I ended up going to the hospital. I had a major manic episode and was put into the psychiatric unit. After a couple days of evaluations and trying different meds, they let me know that my new diagnosis was bipolar 1 disorder. So I had that, and in working with that and trying to understand that, I found in the hospital, they gave me this new diagnosis, but they didn't so much explain what that meant. It felt as if it was a death sentence of sorts. Like I had heard things about it and knew of the stigma and how huge something like that is. So that was really big in my life, but like I said, I wasn't given much support or education, kind of just stabilized and released. That was kind of earlier in the story, and then that comes up here at this point in where I'm at. The bipolar came back in full swing after that period of time, and I had lost the kids and went to the emergency room and kind of came clean about my use and things like that. And that led to the kids being removed again, and then this whole process of I was in a revolving door cycle of psych ward back to my house, no new information, just being put in, medications changed, stabilized ish. I wasn't actually stabilized because I'd come back out, go into the same situations, same things that led me to be there in the first place with nothing different. So just continuous revolving door of treatments, or not treatments, psychiatric units. Eventually I would be gone so long I couldn't hold a job during any of that period of time. So became homeless. I lost the apartment that I had built up and had. Was sent to, the psychiatric unit. And then from there, treatment, I went through one that I wasn't stabilized enough to hold on to. So back to the hospital. But eventually I'd come to a treatment center. And I found myself just really sick and tired of being sick and tired. That was my rock bottom for me. Just so many years of being lost and being sick, ill, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, just totally spent and burnt out. Really missed my kids. That was the main thing with me that hit me, was all the years of not being there for my kids and the detrimental things that I did do. So at that point, I was really ready to find recovery. I plugged myself in. They stabilized me on medications there at the treatment. It was an IRTS facility, dual diagnosis. So they got me on the medications that I needed to be on, got me in regular mental health care. I sought out recovery in the community, found a local Alano, got plugged into AA meetings, found a sponsor, worked the 12 steps, really put the work in. It was great because the case manager that I had throughout all those previous things that I mentioned, she followed me, stuck with my case. She was a firm believer in me. When I feel there's some parts of my story where I really fell through the cracks, especially in early childhood, things like that. But then later on in adulthood, I'd find that professional supports would come into my life, like almost be assigned to me. But they had such a caring and a knowing and a compassion that they followed me even when they didn't have to. She would make like an hour-long drive just to see me, be in person, be there for me, and just hear my story. I met the CPS worker too, went above and beyond. She stayed with my case. She never cut me off or made it to a point like you can permanently not have your kids because you can't get it together. She was always a supporter and always pushing for me to get where I needed to go. I think they saw the potential and they didn't let go of that, and they were there for me. So being there in the treatment, the supports, and then I started meeting people in the recovery community. I got plugged into the Alano with the meetings, but then meeting people, the sponsor who then connected me to all these different people. I found online resources, support groups on Facebook. There's groups for like sober and serious. I would just put a post and say, hey, I'd like to go. I really need a meeting tonight. Is there anybody going or anybody that could give me a ride to this place? And I always got an answer in that. And I even got tapped into street ministry, going out and helping the homeless people. There was a man that I somehow met online, and he was talking about changing your life and things like that. And he was a pastor, so I had a conversation with him and just kind of shared my hopes and my dreams where I was at, and he plugged me into that street ministry. So that was really my first experience with that. That was just a really good experience altogether, and I would graduate that treatment with flying colors, and it was just amazing. I was moved to like a sober home, which I very much enjoyed. It was strict, religious, chores, things like that, and I really plugged into that, but mental health got in the way again, and back to treatment again, where I kind of lost some hope. I was introduced to a peer specialist at that time, which really planted a seed in me. He did a RAT plan with me, and we worked on my mental health, and it was really the first time somebody had told me that I could take hold of my life, my situation, my mental health, and then seeing somebody like me who was flourishing, working in a treatment place, had sort of the same diagnoses I did, things like that, just flourishing. It really gave me a lot of hope. I'd go through a period of coming out of that treatment, getting reintegrated adult foster care, where I did all right for a while, had a relapse, but then came to a point where it was like another real rock bottom for me. I came to the point where everything was falling apart. I had used up my family, used their place to drink and do drugs and act out and things like that. So I was cut off from my family. I was cut off, eventually told that I could no longer stay at the foster home, and really hit like a hard rock bottom where I was ready to end my life. I had a plan. I knew what I was going to do, and then sort of has spiritual intervention. I feel like God really showed me. I just sat and thought on that and saw two pathways very clearly right in front of me, what it would look like to end my life, what it would mean to my kids, the legacy of my family, how much that would hurt them and just forever change their lives, or really ask for help for the first time on my own terms, not because I got in trouble or being in the system, just used to so many systems and being told what to do and navigated by other people, that I had this option to really do it on my own terms. So I chose that. I had, my faith talks about a mustard seed size faith, and I had that. And so I took that and I ran with that and I asked for help. I went to my case manager that I had had all this time, and I was honest and open and transparent about it and told her all what had happened throughout, that I had hid and things like that, and that I really wanted help. And she got me plugged in with that. Treatment wasn't an option. At the last minute, another foster home did open up. So I was moved there. I took that. That was my second chance from God. I saw something I really didn't want to waste. So I got moved into that. I put into practice like everything I had learned at the good treatment that I went to. I got plugged back into an Alano. I got a sponsor, reworked my steps. I didn't have transportation. So again, utilized what I picked up about reaching out online, found rides to church and got plugged in there. I got all the professional support could. I still had the CPS, the case manager. I ended up seeking arms out. I got plugged in with them, peer support and things like that. And it all just kind of worked out nicely. I had a slip up. That would be 4.5 years ago that I mentioned my last hospital visit. But that time was different for me. Had gone so many times being in the hospital and letting it beat me and letting it defeat me and knock me back down and continue the cycle. So it was just my faith, I think, that brought me through, that I came out of that hospital and I just picked it all back up, kept doing well. There was a move to a new place, but I continued getting the support, moved to a new foster care. They would eventually teach me how to take my medications myself. I got a caddy waiver through whoever set that up for me. I got a med binder that would go off to ensure that I was on my medications at the proper times, and it would go off, and they basically trained me to take them at the same time every day, go down for my machine, it would alarm off, and then I'd take them. It was really positive for me because a lot of my issues with bipolar is just takes medication. Like, I can't really manage that without, for me. So, and the seasons that I struggled, it was most of it related not to taking my meds or coming off the meds or playing doctor with my meds, only taking what I wanted to and not what I didn't. So I got really strong in like taking my meds, taking care of myself physically and mentally, continuing to go to church and flourish there, make new friends, the recovery community, growing that, doing activities, getting out, plugged into employment and housing with Rise. They followed me along this whole time too and really helped me out a lot. ARMS and peer specialist therapy, got into that and was talking, tried EMDR. Really anything available to me, I navigated and figured it out, got it set up for myself, and just kept progressing at that, kept doing day by day, putting it together, adding up the time, and just doing what I needed to do to take care of myself. I got a job and worked for that for a year and a half, just put that time in. I was on disability at the time, so I worked part-time and just did what I do, like every day, one day at a time, as the program says, and that eventually paid off. Rise helped me get into my own apartment. I was in independent living again. I had had over a year of sobriety under my belt, so they supported me in going for custody of my child back, my son Dominic. I got full-time custody back of him. I had so many support letters by that period of time, people that had watched my story and seen me succeed and put in the work and have that stability. And even my sister, who had had custody at the time, was down for that. She agreed, and it was a very short hearing, and got him back, and we lived together in that little apartment. My daughter was coming every weekend, spending a lot of time with the kids. The peer support that was mentioned to me early, back in my using days, that they had planted a seed there, And then the couple of peer supports that I encountered in the psychiatric unit in treatment had really sparked that passion inside of me. And there was something about that that just kind of clicked for me, and I wanted to go after it. So at that period of time, I did the certified peer recovery specialist training and passed with 100 on that, got certified with the state. I immediately began searching out treatment centers, just making calls, just happened to ask, are you hiring for this? I found a place that really liked me that wanted to hire me. I did have to go through the set-aside process, which was, I tried to navigate kind of on my own. I got pretty excited and like ran through it quickly and didn't make it on my first try, but then slowed down and let Rise help me with an appeal. We resubmitted everything, and they said if we would have had this the first time, we would have passed it. And I was like, yeah, that's me. But it passed, and I was able to start working in the treatment center. I began mentoring for my church's transitional living program, which helps people coming out of addiction, homelessness, abusive situations. So I began really working with people. I began sharing my story, also reaching out to treatment centers to share my story with mainly women that were getting treatment at the time, and just sharing my whole journey with them, getting it out there. Found it's very, very therapeutic for me to do that in a retelling. This today is a different way that I've ever told it. So I'm enjoying this very much. So, but yeah, I just kept plugging in away at that situation, and then it was another graduation where my pastor had an opening in her program, and then I had really begun working for her, so she wanted me kind of in the centralized to work with everybody, so moved me to Cambridge, my Minnesota hometown, and we got a condo, and my son began working at 14. He got a job at McDonald's, and he has done just phenomenal, like the things that he's been through in his life, just so many things, like the worst of the worst is just watching me be taken away by ambulance, him having to go in the cop car and be brought to the hospital. He's just been through so much, but he's never wavered. He's always had a strong head on his shoulders. And like he began working, he did online school during COVID and just remained. He's a go-getter and really just does his homework, gets it done. I don't have to worry about too much. We've always been very close, kind of more of a friendship relationship than mother and son, but that's just the way it kind of played out. So, but we're close in that way. In moving to Cambridge, I worked at the treatment place for a while. I was introduced to Wellness in the Woods. We had someone working for the organization that went to my church that heard that I had become a peer specialist and wanted me to attend one of their events there in Cambridge and check it out and possibly come on. And I did that and helped out a little bit and got very interested. So I began to talk to Jody, the executive director of Wellness in the Woods, and there was an opportunity to work for Pine County. So I then took the Certified Peer Support Specialist to work with mental health portion. I took that training. That was my promise of employment to get in. So I took that training and was certified, passed that one well too, and there was this nice transition from the treatment place into Wellness in the Woods, and then kind of became more official with the church and the peer specialist with that. And then in working with Wellness in the Woods, I began just a few, like 6 hours a month working for Imagine Network. And then it graduated so quickly. I started with Pine County. I began seeking out extensive trainings and furtherings and things like that, bringing them to Jody. And I got trained to be a forensic peer recovery specialist, and that enabled me to then go into jails. Did a RAP 2 training where now I can teach RAP, the program that was introduced to me in treatment. That's there's a lot of full circle moments in my story, but that was a big one, to then be trained to teach it to other people. And then with my forensics background, that brought me into DOC trainings. In 2023, I went to 5 separate prisons to do this training throughout Minnesota. I've been plugged into 2, I think, jails to do peer support now. And then we're expanding into that. I've just done different things with that. Trying to think. Pine became peer-to-peer support, and I work at a drop-in also, family resource centers, kind of all sorts of things. Amber and I have done RAP for the youth at the shop in Brainerd, worked with a wide variety of people. Corrections is really my strong suit, so over time I've graduated into the coordinator for justice and harm reduction. I recently took a training for harm reduction, so I'll be teaching that and building up other people to teach that to others too. I found that training completely changed my perspective on harm reduction, so in order to teach that to others, I think that's huge. I moved into lead peer specialist for my church, so now I oversee the house managers and other peer specialists that we're building. There's going to be sort of a counseling coming out of the church, like an outpatient. The church I belong to is kind of recovery based and meets people in that, teaching classes at our recovery meeting on Wednesdays. on such things as like boundaries, beginning to DBT. Um, I did find 2 years ago I had an updated diagnosis of sorts. I had been in therapy for a while, consistent on meds this whole time, but found that I had a borderline personality diagnosis that came up also. There was a situation where it was put on my diagnostic and I wasn't told, and kind of a blow up, but I had somebody within Wellness in the Woods that is my now director on VPSN. She had also had BPD, and around the time I got that diagnosis, she had just got her new um, like clearing of having it. She had had it for years and went through DBT and really recovered in her life to the point that she no longer met the criteria for the diagnosis. So it just kind of all happened right in the same time. Diagnosis before had really beat me down, and there was a moment of defeat almost. Another diagnosis, I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. Another thing again, a thing working against me. But in having her and seeing her journey, I really just didn't let it defeat me. I was at the point where the labels and the diagnosis didn't define me so much anymore. I just took it as like, okay, it's a part of me. I need to understand it. So I, instead of like falling off or relapsing or anything like that over it, I sought out literature and books at the library to read about this, to understand it. I didn't find too much. A lot was from the family's perspective, so it was hard to find things in which to read. But I did know of DBT, and she teaches that Fridays on our VPSN sessions, and she had done it, and I had touched on it previously in my story, but so I wanted to get plugged back into that because I knew it was treatment for this and had always really had that itch to go back to it. So about a year and a half ago, I started it. I graduated it, put my all into that program, and was really after recovery. I saw her, no longer meet the criteria, and I was like, thinking I wanted that for myself one day. It's really cool. And she like held out the hope that I could get better in it too. So I worked the DBT program, and at the end an updated diagnostic was done, and I was found to no longer meet the criteria for BPD. So that was amazing in my story. Um, Talking about like stability and thriving today, that's kind of like my whole story and how I got up to this point. Stability and thriving today, a lot of it is the same things that I've done throughout my journey, really caring for my mental health, being aware of it. I've gone through the past year, I was working on wanting to be med free. That's always kind of been a desire, but I came to the point where I didn't really let that define me either, that I found it was okay to be on medications. Some people just need them in their lives to live their life to the fullest and be okay. But I tried this process of titrating down on meds, and I was okay with, if we found the lowest therapeutic dose possible, I'd be okay with that. And going through the process, recently I got to the point where it was obvious that's too low. So, communications with my doctor have really helped me thrive. He is very open. If I want to change, he's open to discussing it and making it for me. But I just reached out and I'm like, nope, I know this is the level that I need to be at. So just a knowing of it's okay to be on medications. I, for whatever reason, biological or situational, maybe a combination of both, just have a difference in the way my brain works. So it just takes medications to keep me level, and that's okay, and to live my best life. And I'm kind of a high energy person. I think I have a higher energy kind of baseline than most people. It keeps me going with my 6 roles with Wellness in the Woods, but I love the diversity in it, to be able to go one place one day and another the next, and just meet people and reach with them. That's a big part of me in my life. What keeps me going in my recovery is working with others and peer support. I'm just meeting people where they're at. We have similar experiences. I have, the lived experience of mental health and addiction, recovery, incarceration, CPS, just a wide variety. That's kind of the purpose and the pain that I mentioned in the beginning, is the things that I went through that were super painful. There was also like an insertion of purpose in that, and a passion. When I talk about it, I get really passionate because I love people and meeting people where they're at, hearing their stories, being able to share a little of mine, and watching. It's so beautiful to watch somebody from the very beginning and then develop their recovery pathway, being alongside if there's a slip or a stumble, but then encouraging to get back up. I found peer support has been huge in my life and keeping me going and keeping me better, maintaining supports and services that I've had. I've graduated off a lot of them. I had ILS when I first got my apartment, and they taught me housekeeping skills and some parenting things even, and stuff like that. I had my employment specialist with Rise went through and taught me how to budget. She'd come every month and we'd write down all my bills, budget, see how much I had left. A cool thing that has happened also is finances, and like gaining endurance in my work has stepped up throughout over time. So now I'm able to handle the workload that I've worked myself off of disability. So I'm no longer on that and being able to handle more and more work and pretty much full time between the two jobs now. My work just keeps me going. My kids are huge. My relationship with my son, he did the online schooling and then now he's in PSEO. He just started this past fall with college, and I started too. I went back to school. I decided I was originally going to transfer to a 4 year for a bachelor's, but then with my church that I'm still, involved in, and the outpatient that she's looking to do, I'm like, well, how perfect would that be to get my LADC certificate, just come underneath the therapist that she's going to plant and just work in practicum under her. So I'll be able to do that by summer of next year. On the course that I am, I'm halfway through my first spring semester and my first fall semester. I got straight A's in that, and this one I'm like A's and B's, so it's still pretty good, but on the right track and doing great with that. And then back to my son, like he just enlisted too. I just signed the papers. He turned 17 in about a week, so he's enlisting in the military. Just really proud of him, and he's a huge part of how I keep going and how I do what I do. And it's always a process, I think, of setting goals and being aware of yourself and where you want to go and reassessing. Like you set a goal and you meet that goal, then what's next? Keep moving forward always. And I always try to remember that you can't fill from an empty cup. Like in working with people and hearing so many stories, it can be draining at times. So self-care has been huge to me. I'll get going and running around and putting it on Facebook, and my boss will just send me a message, breathe. She's been extremely supportive for me and keeping me level so I don't go too much and get burnt out. But just like the people in my life, so supportive. I found my bio family throughout the years. There's been a lot of hurt there. I've been put down for my mental illnesses that I had. I call them mental health challenges now, but it really was an illness at the time and where I was at. But I was judged. I was put down. I was told I'd take handouts all the time, just things like that. Just really, I found the people that were supposed to love me the most really let me down and disappoint me. But it was these people, both people with lived experience and not. You can just tell when they have that compassion and they carry it in their heart that they want to be there for you, that they care about your wellness, they want to see you flourish and live your life to the best. And I think that's, in bringing this to you guys in this program, I can see that for sure. And then, just talking in specific people that have been there for me. My case manager, Casey, that spent that whole 6 years with me, like from the worst of the worst to the best. I graduated from case management probably 2 years ago now, but I keep sending her emails when big things happen. I'll be sending her this recording. She was huge in my life. There were so many people, instrumental people that held the hope for me. That was a theme. People like Monica, who had recovered from it and was there for me and knew from personal experience what it was like having BPD and being there for me when I had the trouble with the therapist and it being on my chart without telling me. She sat with me, she talked me through it, let me feel my feels. And then without influencing, I came to my own decision about the treatment that I wanted. And that's really like what we need to do, is come alongside people as they decide what works for them, what's right for them, because really it's ultimately it's our choice and what we want to do with our lives that really sticks and we can do the best with. And then, with her, and then she was there for me when I first started in Wellness in the Woods on our VPSN. We had a session that I was pretty much silent the whole time. I was quiet, not sure of myself, didn't want to say anything and sound stupid, just really self-conscious. And she supported me through that whole meeting, and then afterwards asked to talk to me. So I'm like, oh no, I'm in trouble now, But she came at me and she's like, is everything okay? Like, how can I support you? What's going on? And it was no judgment, it was just support, and I could tell she wanted to understand and then help me understand what was happening. And throughout that process, I just blossomed and flourished, and I'm pretty talkative now, pretty open. I'll share my story openly and not ashamed of things. And she's somebody that really held the hope for me and made a difference in my life. And my boss, Jody, is like a friend too. I can share with her all the ups and downs in my own life now, how I'm doing self-care, things I look forward to, but then giving me a space, this Wellness in the Woods that I work for now, so many avenues and outlets to do what I love to do and things that pertain to my life. Those lived experiences, those tough times now enable me to do the work that I can do. Like jail was a really tough time for me, but in that darkness and despair of sitting in that cell, I knew one day I want to come back here, but I want to do something that'll make a difference. And now I get to do those things. And I can't go without mentioning that's a big part of what God's done in my life, like things that the enemy meant for evil and the things that were done to me and the losses that I had and just time after time heartbreak. It's now transformed into good. It's not only good for me, but it's good for the others and the impact I can have on lives and carry forward recovery and wellness altogether. And another big person was that CPS worker. A lot of times in cases like that, you'll feel alienated from your workers and things like that. It feels like they're talking down to you. They'll give you assignments or, hoops to jump through, and without support, like it's hard to do that. And I came to find, working with her, I was her only case out of X amount that actually ended in reunification. And I think you just see that so often that those connections aren't made and families aren't brought back together. So that can be, I know, really defeating for those workers, but she stuck through it and she never treated me as like a bad parent or somebody who didn't deserve my kids. She always wanted the best for me and would even at times just say, Ashley, I need you to go to the hospital, because she'd listen to me and hear what was going through my mind and what I was experiencing and saw that there was outside help that needed to be brought in. So her compassion and just all the people that held hope that were there for me. And that's what I'd say in supporting others when you're in that work where you're meeting that person where they're at. That's the biggest thing for us in growth and success, is having somebody just stand alongside us, not look down on us or judge us or think we should be doing this or that, but like just supporting, hearing us, talking to us, doing things that we enjoy. Like I find in peer support sometimes it's just somebody has so many professional support. Sometimes it's let's just go to coffee and chat. Let's play a game of Uno. Let's color some pictures. Sometimes it just is that. So simple that you just need a time to just breathe and not be alone and be able to say what you need to say. And being that person and standing in the gap, and just being present and caring and compassion. And we can really tell that in people, and I think people that have gone through really deep, dark stuff like that really have kind of I forget what that's called, but can really read people and see where they're coming from. So when that compassion comes across, it's easier for us to open up and share what we're going through, and then, set goals. And if we have fallbacks, the trust that we build to be able to tell you that we've had a fallback and then come back to where we need to be and keep moving forward. And just no judgment, just, coming alongside us and making a difference. But yeah, that's my story. That's kind of where I came from, what happened, and where I'm at today.